So welcome to section 5 of the scrap challenge, building the home dumbbell. When we finished the wheel section 4, I was left to go away and do some sanding, clean down the edges of the wheel. That's been complete and I'm really pleased with how that's turned out. And also to fit a 65mm strip of hardboard around the centre of the wheel that removes all of the imperfections. So I've done that. It's held in place by releasing the studs and then putting the strip in and then tightening them down again, and then at the end of the strip I've put a couple of wood screws in each end to hold it in place. I've also fitted the final 2 studs in the wheel because I needed to complete the compression of the wheel to hold the strip in. So to all intents and purposes the wheel is now complete. I just need to fit the flanges and drill the centre hole, but I can't do that until I get the steel shaft that this is going to rotate on. But the good news is that should arrive this afternoon. So onward with the build of the frame. First of all, I want to just do a little bit of work on the board, just point out the dimensions that I've measured above up in the loft for where it's going, and then there is nothing stopping us cutting the steel and making the frame as the next part. Right, so a few little bits about what we're going to do with the frame. What we need to do is to create 2 rectangular frames that we will then connect together with cross braces. Those rectangular frames need to be 1400mm on the long side, and as far as height is concerned, the wheel itself, the radius is 52.5. When we add a pillow block onto the top of here, that will give us about another 45mm of height. So I'm looking at making these uprights something like 600mm. We don't want them too high, otherwise the thing will be more unstable, but it's obviously got to be high enough to provide clearances on all sides. Once we've made the 2 frames, we can then put them together so that we make up the frame itself using some cross braces. Now the width of the cross brace will be very much dependent on the width of the wheel and the shaft. I've got a maximum width here of 400mm because that is the length of the drive shafts or drive shaft that we've got coming. But if I can, I will try and just reduce that down a bit to the point where it's manageable, but obviously the narrower it is, the more unstable it is. We then have to look at the cross braces, and I want to actually put the frame together and feel how unstable it is before we get started, and then that will show me whether I actually have to put in any braces that are on a diagonal bottom to top, or even between these 2, just to stop it from flexing in different directions. When a wheel turns, a bell wheel or any other wheel that's weighted like this is, with all the weight in the bottom, if you imagine the wheel, the quadrants we've cut out are here, all the weight is at this part here. As the wheel rotates, the forces will be like this, and I think I'm correct in saying that the amount of force this way is equal to twice the weight of the difference of the weight within the wheel. So there's going to be forces that are going that way, and what we don't want is for the frame to tilt over. So first thing to do is to make these 2 frames, so we might as well get on with that. Okay, so that's the 4 pieces at 140 centimetres or 1400 mil. I've just taken the edges off them on the grindstone, just so there aren't any bits that are going to be damaging anybody, particularly me. They're also, you would have seen I turned some of the pieces round. Some of these have been cut before, and I wanted to go from the original edge, because if you go from the original edge, then the gap to the end, or from the end to the first slot, is the same at both ends at 140 millimeters. That's just centimeters. That's purely luck, I can assure you. So now I need to find 2 pieces to do, 4 pieces to do at 600 for the uprights. So that's next. Okay, so that's my 4 long pieces, 4 short pieces. At this point, I'm going to go and have a cup of tea. We'll come back and we'll assemble it in a minute. Right, I'm quite excited. Not only have I got a cup of tea, but while I was doing that, the delivery came, and this appears, I think, to be my shaft for the centre. It's finally arrived. So let's just have a quick look, see what we've got. And that should be, I hope, 400 millimeters. Bang on 400 millimeters. So the idea being that this will fit beautifully into the pillow blocks and be clamped down, and that is going to be the spindle on which our wheel's going to turn. I very much doubt if it's going to bend. Okay, so we've got the shaft, we've got those pillow blocks. what we now need to do is to actually make the frame. So what we have is each piece here needs to have 2 uprights on it, one at either end. So if I get rid of those 2, and 2 of the shorter ones. First thing we need to do is attach the bracket to each end of the smaller ones, and then we can put them onto the larger ones with the bracket on. I think that would be the easiest to do. So we need some 10mm threads. And then a second. As you can see, it's a very quick way of assembling. A couple of nuts and washers. And we can slide that up to the end. I'm not going to tighten them, but you can see that's going to be a very solid bracket when we put it onto the other one. So now I'll do the same on this end, then do the other 2, and then we'll get them attached. There we have the first of the side frames. It feels very strong indeed in this format. I've got to just tighten everything up, but I think this is going to be more than adequate to hold our belt. So at this point I'm going to continue and do the next one, and then we'll look at putting a couple of cross braces across, and then we'll see really how stable it actually is. Well, it was all going so well. I just put the brackets on the end of the other two uprights and went to get the zebs to attach them to the other long frame sections, and I looked in my zeb box, and unfortunately I have a lot of 6mm zebs, not the 10mm ones, of which I only now have 2 left, which I want to use on the frame for strength. So I'm going to have to go to the suppliers tomorrow and pick up a box of 10mm zebs so I can continue. So that's all I can do today. Right, I'm delighted to report that I've now had the delivery of a box of zebs, as well as some brackets that I also need, and we can therefore continue with our frame construction. So there we have frame number 2. All we've got to do now is put them together. But first of all, of course, we have to determine how far they need to be apart. Now, the shaft that we bought that arrived the other day is 400mm, so that is probably going to be the recommendation. So if we make sure that they are square, and they actually look square to me, we now need to fit the cross braces, which we'll actually attach to the inside of the frame and then across. So I'll make those, get the length cut to 400 minus plus the width, because they need to go right to the outside, and then we can get those cut. Right, we've got our 400mm pieces of unistrut that we're going to use to make the frame. Okay, so that's our frame. I think it's fair to say that it's pretty sturdy. Very pleased with that actually. So now we've got to put the wheel in the middle. The next stage will be to drill the centre of the wheel and put the bearings in, and then we have to find the correct position on here to actually put the pillow block bearings so that it will run, because then we've also got to consider where it's going to fall out of the frame and down through the hole in the ceiling, because of course we're also going to have to put the pulley, the equivalent of a ground pulley, in the bottom of the frame somewhere. So I've got some bits and pieces to help me do that, but the frame is now pretty much assembled. We will of course have to take it apart, I think, to get it up the stairs and into the room above, but first of all I want to get it all set up down here with the wheel, and I can actually then try spinning it, turning it, and see how it behaves. So to all intents and purposes we now have a unistrut frame. I was a bit worried about the fact it may bend end to end, as I put on the diagram here, but having felt it now, I think we're very much there as far as strength is concerned, certainly in that direction. The other way it also is pretty solid. So there you go, one frame ready to go. The next thing will be to mount the wheel, drill the wheel, then mount it on the axle, and that will be in part 6.